Hey, Chad Peterman here, your host of the Can't Stop the Growth podcast, a show that advances the home services industry and beyond. In this exclusive series, I've joined forces with Camp Digital to bring you powerful learnings that advance you and your business in the realm of all things marketing. Together, we bring content that empowers you to build a positive, healthy workplace for you, your people, and your bottom line. So let me officially pass the mic to Camp Digital for today's episode, chock full of insights that you can take and apply to your growth. Now listen and grow.
Welcome to Around the CAMPfire. I'm Katie Donovan, CEO of Camp Digital, and I'm excited to share conversations with real home service business owners and executives. Some of my favorite people who I think are the industry's top leaders, innovators, and trailblazers. Each episode, we dive into stories behind successful home services businesses, the wins, the challenges, and everything in between. Our goal, to share real stories from real people. So grab a seat around the campfire and let's get started. I am so lucky to be joined today by one of my favorite people in the space, let alone one of the sharpest minds in the space, Neal Zamore, he's the head of marketing at the Storr Group. Neal, thank you so much for letting me browbeat you into joining us today and taking the time to do this. I'm so appreciative.
I'm happy to be here, Katie. Thank you.
I love it. I love it. You guys you're in for a real treat. For anyone who doesn't know Neal, I have no idea what he's going to say. You cannot prepare for a conversation with Neal. You never know what's going to happen, but it's always good. So thank you very much. So with that, I want to get started. I know your background. I know your background as one of the top minds early in the space of home services, the first in private equity in home services. But can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into home services?
Yeah, I actually, it's a story of how I got into marketing to begin with. I absolutely loved the challenge of marketing. I loved applying analytics to figure marketing out. I fervently believe that marketing is a science, not an art. And I was heading up consumer marketing for Avis Budget Group, having a great time, but my brother-in-law kept bothering me to get into private equity. And one day I got a phone call for a private equity-backed HVAC company looking for a CMO to turn them around. And that was back in 2017. And that's actually what got me into the trades.
Yeah, I love it. 2017. I don't think if a lot of people knew what private equity was in the home services space in 2017. So you're kind of a pioneer there for sure. So what inspired you? Like why, when they said, hey, you should get into private equity for an HVAC company, you were doing these other things. Why did you decide to go into the trades? Just because of the opportunity?
Yeah, it was first the opportunity, but I was in a bunch of verticals before that. I was in, financial services, healthcare, then, finally car rental, and home services was a completely different beast. And, back in 2017, it's still for the most part, you get these mom and pop HVAC shops. They don't really know marketing. So it was absolutely fertile ground. It was such a challenge. And it remains one to this day, which gets me out of bed.
That's one of my favorite things. So you and I actually met, you may not remember, but in 2018, tail end of 2018. So you're still, you're like, I talk to my therapist all the time about it. Or at least I talk to my therapist all the time about meeting you. But what was one of the biggest challenges when you started? Because there wasn't anybody before you in that space. You really, truly were pioneering it. What was one of the biggest challenges you faced?
How many moving pieces there are. So HVAC is simple, but it's complicated, right? There are so many moving parts, whereas, I was used to in my other jobs, at Avis, okay, get them to the site, just make the site not suck and hopefully they'll convert and try to upsell them. End of story. And then in HVAC, first of all, it depends, the weather outside depends heavily on that. Then you've got to factor in the people answering the phone, whether they're answering the phone or not, how well they're booking, overcoming objections. Do you have the technicians? Are your technicians showing up? Are they monetizing it? There were so many false negatives to many of the tests because they didn't take into account it's more than just the lead dummy. So that's what it was for me.
Yeah. Amen to everything you just said, by the way. Now, I'm actually thinking about making this entire podcast conversation a trip down my Neal memory lane.
because I love to ask people about KPIs. And whether you know it or not, we were down visiting you at that amazing restaurant that you took me to in Memphis that had the best club sandwich I've ever had in my entire life. And if you don't think a club sandwich can be amazing, you got to go to that place. And I was there with my chief revenue officer, and he said, "What kind of KPIs do you measure?" And you were like what is it, that brilliant mind or whatever? When you start, I mean, like, you can see the numbers flying out of your head. So if I asked you, like, what do you, in your position as the head of marketing for a good-sized PE group, both in pools and HVAC, electrical, plumbing, what are some of the KPIs you look at, whether it's daily, weekly, or monthly?
Sure. So my two primary governors are cost per lead and cost of advertising. So cost per lead is important because it speaks to the efficiency, obviously, of our lead acquisition, but that's not the end of the story. Then it's how well are we as an organization doing at monetizing those leads. So I look at cost of advertising, and I've had plenty of examples of where, people are just I mean, I've had diminished cost per lead, but my cost of advertising sucked. And habitually, I had to peer into the kind of the organizational funnel. So now on a weekly basis, I actually prepare a cradle-to-grave funnel, everywhere from, what did we spend on advertising to how many inbound calls, all the way down to tech turnover, average revenue per ticket. And I got into that habit because at ARS, we had about 70 locations, and, figure about 4 or 5 marketing tactics to reach. So the key when you're dealing on that kind of scale is managing by exception. So by color coding it, I can quickly see if I'm looking at anybody where the revenue is red, I can look up the funnel and I can at least see where the smoking gun is, right? So I had a recent example of where cost per lead was looking great. Call volume was fantastic, but the revenue wasn't there. And as I looked up the funnel, I noticed that their cancellation rate was twice what it used to be. Well, it turned out they lost 2 plumbers. So they were getting the leads. People were accepting the appointments, which were booked out 2 days in advance, but then they called up and canceled. And just kind of having all those metrics let me quickly see, okay, where do I need to throw resources at?
It's interesting because, you come from these large organizations. Most people that listen to this podcast are smaller businesses. How can they do that? Like, how do they even start? Because you made it really simple when you said cost per lead and cost per advertising, but is there like some cheat code you can give us around how they can measure some of that in their own business?
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, most of us are probably on ServiceTitan. So 95% of the metrics that I use are I'm importing some ServiceTitan report. So it's already there. And, for cost per lead, it's quite simple. I just take what I know to be the advertising cost. Now some of us don't know advertising cost until, maybe 2 weeks after month end. So here's what I do is I will take the monthly budget. I'll remove the digital budget. I'll prorate the offline budget by workdays in Excel. You can do it quite easily. So divided by the number of workdays in the month times the number of workdays for that report. And then I'll add back the actual digital spend for my vendors. And that's how I keep an intra-month tally of what my advertising expense is. And then I just take that number and I divide it by the number of leads, which is right from ServiceTitan.
Oh, thank you. I've never had anyone explain it that way. So that's really good.
No, and then the other part, cost of advertising, is simply taking that derived advertising cost, right, and dividing it by what the revenue, and that's all from. And this is important in ServiceTitan. If you want to know what your revenue is, go to the invoice data set and make sure you choose the field income and not total.
Why?
Because total's going to include non-revenue things, and it's also going to include any taxes. Whereas income is only going to choose those line items that have a GL type of income. So it's a better statement of what your revenue actually is.
I just feel like we just had like a 101, actually a TED talk on how to do that. So that was and super well laid out. So thank you for doing that. That was pretty amazing.
Or I may have put half the audience to sleep.
this is a loaded question, and I realize it's a loaded question, but do you expect those to have different tolerance levels depending on the trade and the time of year?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're going to find, at least I have found in the HVAC, I look absolutely brilliant from June to August. We all look so good. So yeah, your cost per lead on the HVAC side is going to be usually lower in the summer months. Plumbing, by and large, will have a lower cost per lead than HVAC simply because there's a lot more competitors in the HVAC space. So you're on the plumbing side, you're competing less. And it also depends what it's, so in the downtimes, it's going to be worth exceeding your tolerance level for cost per lead to keep your techs busy. Because if your techs aren't busy and they leave you, now you've got much bigger problems. So a tolerance of your cost per lead would be warranted.
Fascinating that you said that, because we even see that in LSA. So in LSA, the average cost per LSA lead in HVAC is $77 right now, or averaging. We see it spike up as much as $100 and even over slightly in some markets. And then plumbing is always a good $20, $30 less cost per lead across the United States on LSA. So I mean, your instinct in what you're seeing is dead on from the numbers that we can see on our side too. So you're like, yeah, I know.
And the other thing too, no. I was just about to say, not to make myself feel old, but I remember the days, I guess it was 18 and 19 when, LSA, it's still a marketplace, by the way. It's just fractional pennies but there was a time when it was like everybody's paying $28 a pop.
I had a client.
You're 77.
I had a client when I first started working with LSA. We had a client and it had just opened into their market. It was like maybe a tier 3, tier 4 market, right? Like they don't even have a farm team, let alone a football team in this market. They were paying $8.19 a lead from LSA in their market.
I know.
A lead. And it was back when you had to have 3 people sign up or they wouldn't show it even. So it was him and 2 others in that market. And the good old days, right? The good old days. So, and then COVID.
I feel like I just became my dad who still laments that gas is over $1. So
yeah, right. Exactly. I love it. Well, let me ask you something else, because I've known you for quite some time, long enough to know to carry bail money when I go places. And I've always seen you. I said this to you the other day offline too. You've got a really admirable leadership style, something that as a matter of fact, I had recommended some people to you in the past because I believe in your leadership style so much. Can you talk to us a little bit about your leadership style and how you would describe it?
Yeah, it's funny. It's I don't do it intentionally to be a leader. I do it to inspire. And I remember, in my career, I absolutely hated when people told me exactly how to do something. I just hated it. So I'm very mindful of that. But also I have found that when you don't tell people how to do something, you'll be surprised with solutions they come up with. So the first thing I do is, I call it freedom with fences. So for all of my folks, I'm always explicit about what the conditions of satisfaction are, right? So look, as long as you do it and keep the cost per lead here or keep the ROAS here, I don't care what you do. And so I empower people, but sometimes when people say you're empowered to do whatever you want, I think it's a euphemism for, I'm just not going to take the time to tell you what the guidelines are. And then, I'll either be pleasantly surprised or not surprised. So that's step 1. Step 2 is, and I learned this a long time ago, like it or not, the majority of our waking life is spent in the job. So if you're not smiling and laughing, the majority of your life is spent not smiling or laughing. So I naturally like to have a good time, and I think the people around me like to, and I certainly hire people who feel that way. So it's a combination of letting people know what the conditions of satisfaction are. So there's an expectation, letting them have full access to their creativity, and laughing while we're doing it.
I love that. I'll tell you just to mirror that. We're in a unique role because I am a vendor to you, and have at different companies at different times worked with you. And I don't think I've ever once heard you raise your voice. Not once. You've had tough conversations with us. You've had to have hard conversations. We just had one recently. But you do it in a manner that's so that inspires me anyway to want to work with you. And so I personally, just from the vendor side, find that really admirable, truly. All right, back to it, my friend. What advice would you give someone looking to scale their home service business? You are uniquely qualified to answer this question because I've seen you work with $400,000 a month shops up to $4 million a month shops. So what advice would you give someone looking to scale their business?
Make sure that you know the numbers that are important to you. I think a lot of times people will get seduced by revenue and not measure how much they're actually taking home and understand what impacts that. Right? Like, I could give an example. I worked with a company who had, very large companies, as a matter of fact, had a 14 or 15% cost of advertising, right? So for most people listening to this, they would think that's insane and what an idiot that person was. Meanwhile, they had a 23% EBITDA margin,
Ooh.
right? So as long as you know what the numbers are, you know the right things to go after to grow your business.
I'll tell you,
just buying another shop or hiring,
I'll tell you, I've heard some creative. No, I want to run this by you because I've heard some creative answers to this in the past. Mm-hmm. One of them was a guy named Andrew Williams, Platinum Plumbing in Bloomington, Illinois. And I said, give me one of your KPIs. Tell me something. And he said, know how many lawn signs your guys put out every day. I was like, what? Lawn signs? Great. And he said, well, Katie, it tells me something about jobs. It tells me about whether my guys are being, and this is my word, not his, but compliant, like happy employees do what we ask them to do kind of thing. It tells me that the customers are happy because they wouldn't let us put one of those lawn signs. It was really an interesting metric, I would never have thought about that, but it was a really cool one to think about, like when you're talking about scale.
I like that.
Yeah, it was cool. It was a neat one.
The other thing too, it's a tangent to be sure, but I think with digital and with social, we've all gotten seduced that that's the answer. It's digital. And we view grassroots as somewhat archaic. But it still works. I mean, Cloverleaf things still works. Referrals still work.
Yes.
We forget about that because we got a paid search.
Yeah.
No, you got to get your guys to,
Especially as it's been harder to get and retain guys, we tend to go to this path of like least resistance, spend more money, as opposed to three up, three down, or four up, four down, however you do it in your business, is still a great way to get leads.
Yes.
Having been in digital marketing across multiple trades as long as I have been, and been in this space for as long as I have been, nothing is more valuable than a sticker on a unit. Nothing. And the fact that people don't make that part of everyday trainings, we all talk about it, but very few people do I ever see even like practice it in their training. Like get a magnet and practice it in your training for muscle memory. It's just, you're right. It's very few people talk about some of those basics.
I guarantee if people listening, if you listen to your inbound calls, I would say that 70 to 75% are going to be from people that have the stickers. And the reason I know that is at a prior position, as everything's moving to tracking numbers, particularly for Service Titan, a woman started for me in marketing, and it was the mainline number. It was like far and away the most dialed number. She says, I don't get it. That number doesn't appear anywhere. Our commercials had the commercial tracking number. Paid search has its own tracking number. Heck, even the wraps on our trucks. And I looked, it took me hours, and then I realized most of those people were maintenance members, and most of those people had the stickers. So you're 100% right.
I'd shamelessly sticker if I had a car dealer I used to work with years ago. I point because he was actually across the way. And if you brought your car in, he replaced the license plate frame. Didn't matter if you bought it from him or not. Wow. The frames. And I thought, my God, why don't we do that in this space? I would sticker units. If I went in for a water heater, I'd sticker their HVAC unit. I'd sticker their water shutoff valve. Yep. Anyway, I digress. But hey, before we can get to this,
you're right.
Before we can get to this next section, which is meant to be a little bit like, I call it my lightning round. We cannot go any further until you show us a picture of your girlfriend's dog.
Okay. Look,
And this
can
is
I
going to
sh-
make
put
the
it to the
cut, by the way.
camera?
This is, yeah. This is going to, look at that dog. Look at that.
It's
Oh
the
my
cutest
God.
dog in the world. It's Minnie girl. Yeah.
I love it.
Love
All
Minnie.
right.
Yes.
All right.
It's always-
So this next section is meant to be a little bit fast paced and fun. So please feel free to answer it any way you wish.
Mhm.
And this one actually makes me a
Sure.
little nervous. I shouldn't have said that, but what's your, you'll see why. What's your favorite way to start the day, Neal?
I move my body.
No.
I do strength training 3 days a week, yoga the other 2 days a week.
Wow.
Puts me in a great mood.
Oh, I love that. Nice. So like you're like doing the kind of stuff or
Yeah.
are you flexible from yoga?
Thank
Are
God you froze. No, but I'm also not as tight. Like if you saw me falling over, you'd think I was having some kind of episode, but I try.
I love it. What is one tool or piece of technology you cannot live without in your business?
In my current role, God, I hate to give a shameless plug, but it's Service Titan, right? It gives me the pulse of my business.
We hear that a lot. What do you think your greatest strength is as a business leader?
Relying on data, not emotions, and being persuasive with it.
Oh, I like that. But you could have lunch with any business leader, past or present. Who would it be?
Steve Jobs. If you ever read the book Start With Why, which by the way is
I love it.
a great book. There are so few businesses that are uncommon and that actually have a why. And Steve saw the negative in everything, i.e. what's not there. And I just think that's incredible when you hear him speak. If you ever saw him when they rolled out the iPhone that didn't have a keyboard, right? Just everything he did was simply a consistency of the belief of think different. And I would love to hear how he came upon that.
That's a good point. I was turning around when you said that because I actually have the Think with Why right down here on my bookshelf. So I love it. Yeah, I love it, actually. If you were not in the home services industry, what would you be doing right now?
Professional stand-up comic. I did it for 2 years in New York City. I was actually getting pretty good. Actually, a place that closed, Caroline's. I used to play Caroline's. Yes. Yeah.
That explains so friggin' much, just so you know, because you are really hilarious.
But I gave it up to pursue my dream of marketing HVAC.
Yeah,
so,
right, exactly.
It was a trade-off.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. All right, last two questions, my friend. Favorite way to unwind after a long day?
I do like to meditate, but without a doubt, I am such a sucker for a glass of wine and a good series on Netflix.
What's one piece of advice you'd give to a new entrepreneur?
Make sure that you can articulate your offer to your customer. I have seen and heard so many startups. They're 2 paragraphs in. I still don't know what the hell they're talking about. And to me, a succinctly spoken offer is one that quickly reveals the threats the offer helps to avoid or the obligations it helps to fulfill. Plain and simple.
Yeah, I love that.
And those who can speak that quickly will get your attention.
This is the last question, and this is probably the hardest question we ask anyone, especially you, because words are free and you use them up. But what is one word to describe your business journey so far?
Lucky.
Oh, I don't think it's lucky. I think you're great.
It's not planned.
If I had to pick a word for you,
I appreciate that, but
I'd pick joyful.
Yeah, thank you. But I've been very, very fortunate. My luck has far overextended my skills.
Well, Neal, I knew it was going to be fun. You're always fun. Now I know why, because I had no idea you were a stand-up comic, but I love it. Honestly, appreciate your time so very much. Thank you for making time for us today.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to connect with me personally, you can find me at chadmpeterman.com. To see what our team's up to, you can visit petermanbros.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel and consider joining the CSTG Arena. As always, keep growing out there.